So figure in the 60 years between 1960 and 2020, world air traffic grew exponentially before collapsing in the pandemic. The world economic recession shaded periods have had a substantial but relative short-lived adverse effect on traffic. The depressing effect of the combination of the terrorist attack and the SARS pandemic turned financial crisis, often termed the Great Recession, produced similar short-term discipline, a decline in traffic, the fall in traffic in 2020 resulting in the COVID-19 pandemic is unprecedented. Airbus revises its 20-year forecast of traffic growth annually and publishes the projections in its global market forecast 2.1 on the right panel compares the GMF forecast, the global market forecast projections for 2019 and 2021. Now let's go to it real quick. Page 61. Oh, 42, I mean. Supply and demand. Hmm. Hide sidebar. Come on, man. I'm not trying to do that. COVID-19. So right here it says RPK, historical RPK in the billions. Okay, RPK 7.1 shows exponentially before collapsing during the 2020 pandemic. While economic recession shaded, I had a substantial but relative short-term adverse effect on traffic, depressing effect. Shaded parts. So these are economic recessions. Right here, they had very short-lived, except the right here, except COVID-19. The fall in traffic in 2020 result COVID-19 is unprecedented. Airbus revises its 20-year forecast growth annually and publishes GMF's 2.1 on the panel on the right compares the GMF. The the global market forecast June 2021. Airbus believes the pandemic set back growth by about 2 years. By June 2022, this forecast appears accurate as the world's scheduled capacity was 15% below the 2019 level of OAG under the revised RPK projected doubles by 2040. So this should today, it should double by 2040 revenue. And that's revenue per kilometer. And I'm assuming they put per kilometer because they need to put a dollar amount on each kilometer traveled to, kind of be able to gauge what's profitable, what's not. And, that also kind of lets airlines see, oh, what airplane do we need to fly? What airplane do we need to buy? Okay. Mr. H, Table 2.1, it talks about, Table 2.1 just talks about, the scope of the airline industry. It makes up 4.1% of the world economic activity. All right. Key factors driving air transportation demand and supply are explored. Globalization, the increasing integration of world economies and societies significantly benefit travel per capita. Annual travel trips tend to increase with per capita GDP. Globalization broadly refers to increasing integrate emphasize here economic aspects of globalized largest travel. Trade has existed for thousands of years, shaped much of the world's history. The modern era of globalization began with the end of World War II, accelerating the breakup of the Soviet Union in 1991 as countries reduced tariff subsidies. Other restrictions on trade and goods and services, impediments of foreign investment, and the movement of capital were gradually relaxed. Shipping costs fell, especially with the introduction of containerized ocean rail cargo. Okay, what's this all about? Okay, economic liberalization involves economic liberalization. This involves reduced tariffs. But at a decreasing rate as the market reaches saturation, although the high value variance. The data suggests that other factors affect the propensity to fly. The dotted regression curve is useful for the macro forecasting. This shows the air travel per capita, annual trips per capita 1. Air subsidies and restrictions trade. That hurt. Air freight growth mirrors passenger traffic and is closely linked to the world business cycle. It saw a quick rebound in 2021 due to the increased consumer demand. Goods air freight typically limited to high value, low volume, perishable emergency goods due to higher costs compared to land. World market share 2020. Maintaining 2020 2024 right panel annual estimated passenger air traffic growth 18 to 20 Africa annual growth about 5%, Africa, Asia Pacific, North America least because we're the most developed, so this has a lot more room to grow. That's crucial for airlines and manufacturers. 40 supply and demand. Long range macro. A notable concept discussed. That's too much information, I'll be honest with you. Globalization, economic liberalization, as well as reduce tariffs, subsidies, and restrictions on trade, the deregulation of the U.S. airline industry is cited as an illustration where increased competition, especially from low-cost carriers, led to reduced prices and more air travel. Annual revenue passenger miles grew at more than double the rate after deregulation compared to before. The U.S. experience illustrative in figure 2.4. Let's go to 2.4. Supply and demand for air transportation. Growth in the U.S. scheduled revenue passenger miles. RPM. Data source airlines for America. This right here shows. This is the curve. This is the growth curve before deregulation. This is after deregulation right here. This is a lot more growth per 18.3 RPM revenue passenger miles every year. So it's a lot, twice the growth. Regulation only holds it back. Deregulation is what let it spread its wings. That illustration where increased competition, especially from low-cost carriers, led to reduced prices and more air travel. Annual revenue passenger miles grew at more than double the rate after deregulation compared to before. Aeronautics Board believed was required for public convenience and necessity. Increased competition, especially from the entrant low-cost carriers, reduced prices, inducing more people to travel by air. 30 years following deregulation, revenue passenger miles grew by an average of 18.3, more than doubled the 7.3 billion revenue passenger mile annual growth in the 30 years preceding deregulation. However, the future liberalization may be limited by rising populism. Growth in the U.S. scheduled revenue passenger miles. Supply. Okay, Asian nations agreed in 2009 to gradually liberalization of their aviation markets. In 2021, Asian nations and the EU concluded the first block-to-block air transport agreement of the airlines to all member countries. Operate unlimited flights between the regulations. Liberalization. is less promising as the rise of populism and growing resistance to globalization may limit or even reverse aviation liberalization. The history and growth of international aviation are subject to Chapter 11. Okay. Air cargo, air freight growth mirrors passenger traffic and closely linked. It is closely linked to the world business cycle. It saw a quick rebound in 2021 due to increased consumer demand for goods. Forty supply and demand for air transportation. Metric tons in millions. World air cargo growth. 2009 recession. 2020 recession. Cool. Traffic 2.1, however, air freight is closely tied to the world business cycle. For example, cargo volume dropped more than 10% in 2008, then recovered quickly and resumed growth in 2009 following the Great Recession that spanned December 2007 to June 2009, the response to the pandemic recession. However, it surpassed its supply trade caused world cargo volume to decline before the recession. It fell precipitously, and COVID-19 spread rapidly across the globe in 2021 as consumers demanded more goods rather than services. Air cargo quickly rebounded. Air freight is much more expensive than competing forms. Land and sea transport, so cargo is limited to high value, low volume, perishable, emergency freight. Forecasting air travel is crucial for airlines and manufacturers. Uh, Figure 2.5 world air cargo no 2022 metric tons are estimated. Metric tons are estimated. Data sources display forecast our community make informed decisions. Forecasting future sales is the first step in business planning. In most companies, this responsibility falls to the marketing department, which uses a myriad of inputs and information. In some airlines, the function resides in a separate airline planning department. Whatever its source, the sales forecast and other statistics prepared with it form the basis for planning and budgeting by all their operational areas. Long-range and macro-level forecasts are often based on historical trends and correlation with GDP. At the route level, forecasting considers traffic history, passenger types, competition, and prevailing fares to estimate demands and market share. Oh, sure, I can just hover over it and it just tells me what it freaking says. And the source is, what the hell? Figure 2.5, it ends in areas. Okay, so I don't need to go back and forth. That's good. Because I'm trying to see how this freaking software works. Let's go 17. Figure. Oh, wait. 2.9. And ends in what? Chapter 9. Okay, yep. Yeah, that's good. I don't have to go back and forth. Are you going to your friend's house tomorrow?
Probably.
What's his name?
Rayan?
Oh. Did you see him already or no, you haven't yet?
Yeah. I saw Rayan Husseini at the masjid, the Soto.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
You saw who?
Rayan Husseini and his brother, uh, Kinan. That's his brother.
Oh, you saw him? Did you
Yeah.
talk to him?
Yeah, I talked to him. He said if I'm ever in Plano, I'll give him a call. We'll hang out. Maybe I'll go to Plano tomorrow, hang out with both of them.
Okay, I gotcha. Oh man, I'm so thirsty. Check water. That's ASMR for the listener right here. You're listening to me study right now. That's how I sound studying. I don't even know if I'm absorbing information. I need to learn how to learn better. Right. Macro forecasting. Our trouble growth is to assume that historical trends will continue years into the future. An exponential curve is surprisingly close fit to historical RP growth. In Figure 2.1, the regression. Figure 2.1. Go back to Figure 2.1. Where on both sides? This concept is illustrated in two. So, the concept of the Southwest effect is illustrated 2.9, which shows a dramatic increase in passenger traffic when a low-cost carrier enters a market. A 50% decrease in fares cost increase increases 40%. JetBlue entered the New York, Burlington, Vermont market. Similarly, Southwest entry into the Buffalo, Baltimore market, resulting in a tripling of the traffic on a 60% decrease in fares. A doubling or more of traffic response of Southwest. The market was common in the 1990s. They dubbed the Southwest effect. Figure 2.9. Uh, Revenue passenger miles and GDP is 0.56 correlation. It's not quite a 1-to-1, but it's pretty close. 0.56. I mean, if you figure graph world product similar pattern. No correlation. Notice U.S. traffic has grown at roughly twice the rate of GDP overall. Look at that inverse relationship. Let's find demand air traffic. Page 57. Not all of the increase is new traffic. Some is diverted from surrounding areas, as many leisure passengers will drive up to 3 hours to take advantage of lower fares. The Southwest effect illustrates the point. The price is the most important variable in determining the amount of goods or services purchased in a given period, especially the short term other variables such as per capita income and population growth also affect them. And the graphical depiction of the demand curve is conceptually helpful. previously flown now choose to choose the trip. For example, in Europe, Japan, China. There's other factors that can cause total trip hours. That's the other factor that can. Every one there's other factors that can cause a shift or change in demand. For example, in Europe, Japan, Washington D.C., the high-speed train is a substitute for air travel, so passengers who would have previously flown now choose a train that a demand curve for air travel shifts left. It shifts left. It's the alternate between the boss and your market share. Probably the first time since 1950s that the train has a greater market share in a major U.S. city pair than the U.S. Oh my gosh. The chapter also notes that factors like per capita income or availability of substitutes can cause demand curves to shift. Well, of course. Regarding supply, the chapter notes that airlines expand flights and seats to meet demand. The factors that increase operating costs generally leads to a reduction in supply. Well, yeah, that's just general. That's basic economics. Supply receives less emphasis than demand, with the implicit assumption that airlines will expand the number of flights and seats offered to meet an increase in demand. As with changes in demand, several factors generally, any factor that increases the cost to operate flights will lead to a reduction in supply of flights, and vice versa, which is like fuel costs. Higher fuel costs is less supply that airlines got. 2.6. A new route for 2.6, or on 18, by the way. An airline considering adding a new route will first assess the existing traffic and growth potential. Next, it must estimate the portion of traffic. Adding a new route will first assess the existing traffic and growth potential. So it's just and next it must estimate the portion of traffic it can capture. Its market share. Naive estimate of market share is the percentage of total flights it intends to offer on the route. An airline with 25 flights and seats in a market might plan on capturing 25% of the market demand. Such naive estimates are refined by careful consideration of the product offered by competing airlines. Variable considerations include flight frequency, time of departures, number of stops, and route time, aircraft type, product quality, airline reputation. competitive reaction. Of these variables, flight frequency has traditionally been considered critical. High frequency as an important choice criterion, especially with business passengers. The S curve figure 210 illustrates the relationship between the market share measured in percent of revenue and flight frequency. What? Okay, that means a market with in a market in which no carrier has significant price or product advantage, the carrier with the most frequency enjoys a disproportionately higher market share. For example, this S curve shows that an airline with 70% of flights captures an 80% market share. Market share, while the precise shape of the curve would vary by market, the concept remains the same. High frequency gains more than the market, more of the market. There are several reasons for the S curve phenomenon. An airline that offers more frequency will attract business travelers who will choose the airlines with a flight closest to their desired time of travel. Because an airline can charge higher fares to passengers traveling for business, a greater share of the business a greater share of business passengers result results in higher total revenue. Further passengers uh, further passengers become familiar with airlines offering high frequency, so search costs are lower and buying habits are established. Flyer programs add incentives to stick with the dominant carrier in a market. The S curve's validity has been widely accepted, but its relevance is fading. A study back in 2005 by Brendan Dexler found some past evidence for the curve, but little for recently. The growth of low-cost carriers is one reason. The curve implicitly assumes that all competitors charge the same price, with price being the first criterion of airline choice for leisure passengers. A carrier with low frequency may obtain a relatively high market share by offering lower prices. It follows that low-cost carriers entry into market served by high-cost legacy carriers will it follows that an LLC's entry into a market served by high-cost legacy carriers will reduce the S-curve advantage enjoyed by an incumbent airline offering higher frequency. The existing service and competitive intensity are critical for estimating the market share a new entrant can obtain. Competition. Where was I? The chapter concludes with a case study on JetBlue's entry into the London market. This case illustrates the complexities of new route assessments. The established carriers, example British Airways version, challenges like securing slots, strategic choice such as war, potential cost advantages, the diverse among analysts. rests on JetBlue's potential success. The company came to the market further highlights its inherent risks and uncertainties in route decisions. Oh, okay, that makes sense. For existing service and competitive intensity are critical for estimating market share. New entrant can obtain a competitive new competition can obtain competition exists not just for airlines flying around, but also for those serving the same city. City pair with connecting flights through their hub airports. Five airlines, for example, fly nonstop between New York, Kennedy, and London Heathrow, but at least many others provide at least as many others provide one-stop service connecting through their hub airport, like Frankfurt, Paris, Rome, or in Madrid. There's also competition from airlines flying between other nearby airports such as Newark to London. For success in a new market, the airline must offer a product feature or features that will draw passengers from incumbent airlines to expand the market. What does incumbents mean?
As an adjective, incumbent means necessary for someone as a duty or responsibility. Do you want to hear the next one?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
As an adjective, it means of an official or regime currently holding office. Do you want to hear the last one?
Yes.
As a noun, it means the holder of an office or post.
Could you talk about chapter two? Yeah, just can you tell me? Just talk about. Just dive into chapter two instead of the entire book. No, 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 no. Can you talk about chapter two?
Absolutely. Chapter 2 of this book delves into what drives the airline industry.
Uh, mm,
Well, it looks at both airline demand and supply. Factors like economic growth and globalization play a huge role. Exactly. And it also reflects the rapid growth we're seeing in the industry. Possibly. The chapter also touches on airline product offerings. Precisely, from low-cost carriers with minimal frills to full-service airlines. And it talks about how airlines choose their route structures to connect destinations. Exactly. That's a key element discussed later in the book, too. Definitely. It lays the groundwork by looking at what shapes the industry. Right. Thinking about how an individual aircraft is routed throughout the day. Exactly. To maximize aircraft utilization is key for profitability. Airlines try to keep their planes flying as much as possible. That's a simplified example, yes. These circuits are carefully planned months in advance. Well, understanding these routings helps explain why a flight might originate elsewhere. Precisely. And disruptions can have knock-on effects throughout the day. Getting aircraft and crews where they need to be, hopefully on time. It all starts with a schedule. Exactly. That schedule is the airline's blueprint, their core product plan. And the goals are clear. Make money, maximize profitability. Exactly. And, crucially, be reliable. On-time performance is key. Oh, it is. You've got limited airport capacity. Nope. Then you have required maintenance, and then these incredibly complex unit schedules. Precisely. Those CBAs add another layer of complexity. Yeah, you ideally need some slack in the system, but that adds cost. That's the Operations Control Center, or OCC. It staffs 247s like dispatchers, maintenance controllers, crew schedulers, everyone working together. Constantly. Rerouting planes, swapping crews. The Delta power outage showed how critical this is. Total chaos. Dramatically showed just how absolutely critical this central command unit is. Well, they use tactical tools like swapping aircraft. Delays are common, and then the last resort is panic and shuffling. The source notes proactive cancellations became more common due to fatigue.
اثنين. لا لا عم بدرس. Increases the growing world trade. Air freight volume is one indicator of this. 1980 forecasting air travel demands. It's like tossing and forecasting air. It's like tossing with dice or visiting a fortune teller. Advice to your textbook list. Variables page 44 and 44. Demand curve. Demand is the number of goods or services that customers are able to purchase at a given price. Or what makes the average person decide to fly on commercial airline, not fly? What causes the demand to rise or decline? One of which is quality of service. Watch the attached video. How do you feel? How do you feel? First class, coach, economy. I have Squarespace. How do you feel, first class, business class coach? How do you feel? It is, it is, how do you feel about first class, business class, coach, and economy affect affect the quality of service? And is this necessary for an airline to survive economically? Economy airlines such as Southwest have charged one lower price level for all their flights. Have charged one lower price level for all of their flights. Cite at least two outside sources.